Today, I want to talk to you about a narrative that I still think has significant room to grow. We know heading into the ETH Merge, we saw a pump across many ETH-related tokens. Obviously, Ethereum, some of the L2s, and a lot of those ecosystems have performed very strongly. But I think maybe the future of Arbitrum is a lot brighter than just that, and that there's a big opportunity here to actually capitalize in the next few months ahead of a pending Arbitrum Airdrop. So in today's video, I'm going to run you guys through what is happening in the Arbitrum ecosystem, what projects I'm looking at, and also how you can get your hands on the very coveted ARB airdrop that seemingly everyone wants access to. So I've got the information for you guys in today's video. Make sure you smash the like button before we get into it here. So before we get started with the Arbitrum ecosystem, for you guys that don't know, Arbitrum is essentially a layer 2. So similar to MATIC or Optimism, Arbitrum is essentially a layer 2 solution that is actually an optimistic rollup. So whilst MATIC is like a Swiss Army knife of scaling solutions, combining ZK, optimistic rollups, and sidechains, Arbitrum essentially operates with optimistic rollups and aims to relieve pressure off the Ethereum network by validating transactions off the network before they are processed on the Ethereum blockchain. And this is one of the many solutions we've seen that has hit the market in order to quell the transaction-free crisis that we've seen from Ethereum. I see a lot of confusion out in the market with the ETH Merge, people saying, oh, what's the need for L2s now, that the ETH Merge is going ahead. Well, the thing is that the ETH Merge isn't actually directly fixing gas fees. There are many other upgrades happening to the Ethereum network over the next decade, like the Surge, the Splurge, the Purge, which are all upgrades that are leading towards the greater goal of alleviating transaction pressure, reducing gas fees, and making the network faster. But this isn't a one and done process. This process will take time, and in that time, we do have a significant market need for L2s. And I think that the L2s, in the meantime, that can genuinely develop network effect, can solidify their ecosystems and can solidify their ecosystem growth before the Ethereum upgrades fully roll out. And that is the thesis that we're betting on here. Now, in today's video, the Arbitrum thesis I'll outlay for you guys, that is a little bit shorter term. I believe that we will see growth in the ecosystem and potentially amongst some of these altcoins in the lead up to the potential airdrop, which is happening a lot sooner than these next Ethereum upgrades. But I'm just giving you guys a broader picture of how L2s actually fit into the broader ecosystem, as I see a lot of confusion around it. So essentially, Arbitrum, what it does is it lowers network congestion and transaction costs by offloading as much work and data processing as possible from the Ethereum mainnet or layer 1 off to the L2. So essentially, Arbitrum works with 4 key pillars: a verifier, a key, a VM, and a manager. These 4 key pillars are what essentially prop up the Arbitrum chain itself and help achieve its final goal of alleviating pressure off the Ethereum network. Now, we can get very technical, but I just wanted to give you a very quick overview of what it actually does. So in short, an optimistic rollup like Arbitrum and zero-knowledge rollups, ZK rollups, which other L2s have adopted, are examples of layer 2 scaling solutions. You guys know, obviously, MATIC combines a few different scaling solutions and combines it into one package. And we've seen that be a very strong success on MATIC's front. But Arbitrum is one of the optimistic expansion rollups for the Ethereum blockchain that has gained traction. Now, when we actually want to look at the stats to see, kind of how this network is developing, I think the first thing that comes to eye is the vast amount of projects that are actually building on Arbitrum. There's 112 protocols currently launched, many other protocols actually in the works. We can see a huge list of upcoming protocols here that are going to be launching on Arbitrum. And we've seen a lot of the key projects from Ethereum and other EVM compatible chains, obviously Arbitrum being programmed with the Solidity programming language, and it's EVM compatible, making it very easy to deploy DApps from other chains onto Arbitrum. We've seen many DApps, obviously Uniswap, Sushi, Curve, the ones deploy, but we've also seen many new DApps start to deploy, like GMX, DOPEX, Synapse, Radiant, some of these other newer protocols actually choosing to make Arbitrum their home. And we've actually seen the amount of total protocols and the TVL subsequently surpass Optimism, which is another optimistic rollup, which is very popular, which just had their token release. We've seen Arbitrum actually overtake OP, which is very interesting that is kind of gaining steam above and beyond Optimism. And it seems like just lately we've seen a bit of a shift towards Arbitrum away from some of these other optimistic rollups, just ever so slightly. And we could see this in the TVL with Arbitrum taking up 51.64% of the total market share of L2. So when we look at the L2 market share, coming in at roughly 5.13 billion, we can see Arbitrum has 2.65 billion of the total TVL, and there is a very strong taper off after these top three. Obviously, Arbitrum and Optimism are the two main ones, most optimistic rollups. Then we've got two ZK rollups, DYDX and Loopring, coming in at third and fourth, and then Metis, a project I know a lot of you guys are bullish on. That's another optimistic chain. It's not really a roll-up, it's more of a chain, like more of a comprehensive ecosystem play. And I do like Metis. It's not in my portfolio, but it's one I'm continuing to look into. I would like to see slightly more ecosystem growth, but at the same time, I think the tech is quite strong. So I really don't hate the Metis play. There are certainly some very interesting players lower down this list, but I think Arbitrum's the one that kind of liquidity flows into first because it's the biggest one, it's the one everyone knows about, and it does have an upcoming airdrop, so you've got an incentive there to get on board, and that's why the daily transactions have significantly increased in recent times. I'll just zoom in to show you. It processed 165,000 daily transactions yesterday, but it did hit that peak of almost 300,000, and that's basically on par or just slightly less than what Near Protocol has been doing recently. We have seen an uptick on Near due to the recent hype surrounding the conference. But this is comparable with the AVAX C chain. In fact, I think for a couple days, Arbitrum daily transactions actually overtook the AVAX C chain. The major caveat being that AVAX has diverted a lot of its transaction volume onto subnets. But overall, Arbitrum daily transactions are extremely strong. And we can see this evidenced in the unique address chart too, exhibiting quite a strong uptick of growth here. We had a daily increase of, sub 1,000 for many months. And now over the past week or so, we've seen the address count significantly grow. We had that week in June where there was like 40 daily increases a day, 40,000 a day. And recently we've seen an uptick of 5, 6, 7,000 new addresses every single day. So very strong on the address front, very strong on the transaction front, all into the lead up to this airdrop that I'll get to in a second. Just before we get into that and get into the projects that I'm interested in looking at on Arbitrum, remember, if you want to trade any of these projects, buy any of these projects on spot, there's a link in the description to sign up for a ByBit account. You get a $4,200 sign-up bonus, a pretty generous bonus, and you also help support the channel at the same time. So if you do want to trade anything or buy anything, make sure to use the link in the description to get yourself a ByBit account and claim that bonus. Let's get on with the video. So essentially, Arbitrum is exhibiting some very strong growth. And then we can see the L2 fees. Arbitrum is also, one of the networks that has shown strong growth on the fee front. And we can also see that the fees are actually relatively competitive compared to some of these other chains, coming in around 0.03 to actually, process a transaction, a send transaction, versus Optimism at 0.08, slightly more expensive than ZK Sync and Metis Network, but we did have the Nitro upgrade, which I'll talk about later in the video, which is essentially going to make the network faster and will eventually reduce those fees even lower, because although 3 cents is cheap, it can be even lower. And I think for real mass adoption of crypto, especially from a retail perspective, we want like 0.00001 fees. So what is my thesis here? Because we're seeing all these projects start to support Arbitrum. We're seeing a lot of projects deploying on Arbitrum, like Curve now. This is essentially my thesis with Arbitrum. And I'll make it very simple to explain. I think there is definitely a need for L2s in the market long term. My view on the Arbitrum play, though, is slightly more short term than that. I think in the lead up to the airdrop, we are going to see a lot of hype surrounding the ecosystem. Now, clearly, it was already hyped leading into the ETH Merge. So now we're getting a little bit of a cool off, which I think is actually going to present an opportunity. I think that the higher CPI print yesterday is definitely dampening that extreme bull case that crypto could rip to 30K. I think if we got like a print of 7.8 or 7.9%, and we got that 75 basis point hike in November, the next subsequent rate hike, then the market definitely had a bit of license to run. I think now it just makes it a tiny bit harder, given the CPI print came in a bit higher. The bullish momentum was kind of dampened a little bit, and those higher price targets traders were looking at seem to be, at least for now, invalidated. And obviously heading into the ETH Merge, there are inherent risks with that. I do think the ETH Merge goes ahead. I just think, we might see some FUD, might see some panic surrounding the ETH Merge. So over the next couple of weeks, as there maybe will be a sell-off in Ethereum, a continued sell-off. I think there may be an opportunity here to start positioning ourselves in the Arbitrum ecosystem. Now, I'm going to do this slowly because we have the airdrop coming and we don't know when it's coming. A lot of people are saying like 3 to 6 months. I would say there's like a 50% likelihood it happens within the next 6 months. I'd be pretty surprised actually if it didn't happen within the next 6 months. So then that gives us kind of like a DCA horizon of 3 to 6 months where we want to start getting some entries in the Arbitrum ecosystem. Now, what's my thesis behind why I want to get entries in the Arbitrum ecosystem? Well, I think that in the lead up to this airdrop, a lot of people will start using the chain because we know the prerequisite for getting airdrop tokens for these specific projects is holding these tokens and also using them on chain. But I think that the logic behind a potential price run leading into an airdrop is less one of necessity in terms of having to hold these tokens for an airdrop. I actually think it's more psychological. I feel like people will kind of ape into these tokens, maybe speculating on getting an airdrop, and that kind of leads into a positive price performance as more people start talking about the network. So look, this isn't a sure thing, but I definitely think if we're looking at narratives post Ethereum merge, Arbitrum and the L2 ecosystem certainly stand out as something that I think can outperform versus the general market. If Bitcoin nukes to 15K, of course, nothing can actually run here. But if we do see some price stability, then we have seen this popcorn market where altcoins have a tendency to pop against the grain a little bit. So I do think this could be a strong narrative over the next few months. So I'll go through some of the projects that I'm looking at as potentially strong performers because, if we believe in this thesis over the next 6 months, then what may happen is some of these projects just may see a little bit of time in the spotlight above and beyond, what we saw pre-ETH merge. Because yes, a lot of these tokens did pump pre-ETH merge, but a lot are also now down 40% off those kind of crazy pumps. And I think as they come back down, the opportunities do start to present themselves. And that's just kind of how I'm playing this narrative at the moment. So when we look at the ecosystem, there are a few obvious plays. Look, GMX, very, very popular. And I could talk all day about GMX because I've already talked about it. The only problem I have with GMX is that it's already run significantly. And I feel like, look, it probably does cool down eventually, but your upside risk reward is now not very good. Like, I think, at $60, you may get upside of like 100, which would obviously be great because you're earning Ethereum at the same time. But then your downside is also quite strong. All it takes is a drop off in 7-day fees. And a little bit of panic and a general market correction for GMX to halve in price. Now, I think it's a bit too strong right now for it to do so, but if you're buying GMX now, you're buying into the hype. So I prefer to look at things that are a little bit further down the list. Now, GNS is a lot more interesting to me at around the 100 million market cap range, which is a project that's not on Arbitrum. It's on MATIC, but it is launching on Arbitrum. They posted a recent Medium update where they said after they discussed with OG community members, they have decided to put Arbitrum as the highest priority, meaning we know they are going to be launching on Arbitrum soon. If this coincides with the Arbitrum airdrop, I think we could see a little bit of a rotation here, and I think it's already happening from GMX into GNS as kind of GMX maxes out its potential, at least in the short term. Although I think staking GMX tokens, actually not GMX tokens, what's it called? The LP tokens, staking the LP tokens is still a good way to go because you're getting exposure to a basket of assets through GLP to get Ethereum. I still think that's a great play, especially because you can delta hedge it to make it essentially delta neutral or risk-free. I still think that's a good play. I talked about that a week ago in a video. GMX itself, though, I don't think is the best trade right now. I think GNS does start to become a lot more appetizing considering, they're going to be giving that Arbitrum launch soon. And then this thread here went through a few of the lower market caps that could potentially perform strongly around an Arbitrum narrative. The first one's GMX, already talked about that. The second one is Synapse, interesting protocol. Actually, I do like Synapse. I will talk about that more in a future video. It's essentially a bridge. The bridge narrative, I think, will be pretty strong in the future. So I do think long-term Synapse will perform well. Maybe it's not one of these ones that pumps with Arbitrum because the exposure is relatively thin to Arbitrum directly due to the fact Synapse has 18 different chains on its books. But I actually do like it independently as a narrative. So that's definitely one to have on your watch list. Dopex, DPX, this is one of my favorites. They have Atlantics, which is essentially this innovation which allows users to access collateral despite fixing some of their capital in options, which means you can gain extra liquidity on your straddle options, your contract options, allowing you to deploy that capital elsewhere to maintain capital efficiency. So I do like the fact that you can actually utilize Atlantics in order to access collateral, and this liquidity, which would otherwise be tied up in options, can now be used to invest in productive assets, which I do like. At Atlantics, I won't get too far into the tech, but they're essentially an innovation that do allow you to do a few pretty cool things, including facilitating straddle options, which are one of the most popular form of options in traditional finance, but also a unique option that can give you kind of an advantage over using other exchanges, which is why a lot of people do use DApps. So very cool options platform. Derivatives is a massive industry. It will be massive in crypto. We know the size of the industry in TradFi, so there's no reason to assume that the crypto projects can't exhibit similar growth. I do like DApps, and since it's very Arbitrum reliant in terms of its kind of allegiance here, mainly built on Arbitrum, I think DApps will be one of the ones that actually performs. It's just already pumped quite a lot, so I'm still waiting for that pullback on DApps. $200 to $250. I love it, love it, love it, love it as a long-term buy. But as I do think we need to wait for this to cool down a little bit, and I think it will. To be honest, I think it will. The next one I want to talk about is, we can see the DApps options going crazy on the fee front. These kind of smaller ones, you've got SPA, which is an ARB stablecoin protocol. It's got some of the best APRs in stablecoins. I think it's a good one. It's very, very small cap, very risky. We got MATIC, which is the biggest gaming platform, only a 30 million market cap. Remember, guys, these projects don't need to be around for 5 years to take advantage of a pre-airdrop hype play. So these projects just need to basically perform well in the short term. Short term being 6-ish months. So MATIC's another one. And if we go through the ecosystem, I do like Beefy as a play. That's actually a good short-term and long-term play. I view Beefy as something great that you can hold for a couple of years, and something that can also pump in the short term as well. And it really hasn't run. It hasn't run that much compared to these other projects, despite having very, very good tokenomics. Beefy's tokenomics are very strong, actually. Stargate, it's a good play, but once again, it's cross-chain, so it doesn't have the best exposure. So I'd say in terms of the Arbitrum tokens themselves, GMX is solid, but it's already run. DApps is solid. I'm waiting for a pullback. I like Beefy. I like Synapse. Radiant, borrowing, and lending becomes slightly riskier. So maybe instead you go down the list a little bit and look at SPA or MATIC, which are the kind of the riskier ones. But that's basically the altcoin players right now. This thread has a few more. I'm just not at liberty to make calls on ones I've never heard of. Like Plutus DAO, I hear a lot of people talking about this being a good pre-airdrop play. It's got such a low market cap though, so high risk stuff. But if you're chucking in a low percentage, to get exposure to this overall narrative, then I think this definitely can be a play, but I just don't know enough about it to give you a comprehensive overview. Dow Jones, there's actually a lot of DAOs on Arbitrum, which are launching, which could perform well. Once again, extremely low market cap, 5 million. Handle FI, Y2K Finance. This will be very good when it launches, but it hasn't launched yet, so you can't get exposure to it. I kind of view this Arbitrum play as something where you would kind of structure your portfolio where you put a larger percentage into the bigger caps. So, your DApps, your GNSs, maybe some GMX, maybe some Synapse, some, Radiant if you like the borrowing and lending. And then as you go down the list a little bit, you get a little bit riskier. So you might want to chuck some into Plutus, into MATIC, into PLS, and just create a little Arbitrum portfolio. This portfolio may only take up 5% of your overall portfolio. And within that Arbitrum portfolio, a percentage of that portfolio will be geared towards the smaller caps, but the majority, or in a tiered weighting basis, it would gear towards the higher caps. Basically, in layman's terms, bigger the market cap, the bigger percentage it makes up of your Arbitrum portfolio. Smaller the market cap, the smaller percentage it makes up of your Arbitrum portfolio. And then there's also the conversation of the airdrop here, because we know that a lot of the Arbitrum some of the Arbitrum projects will be doing their own airdrops ahead of the Arbitrum airdrops, which is quite interesting here. And that's something that we've already seen. Like there's been airdrops for, GMX. There's been claimable airdrops across other ecosystems. We could see, the Mycelium farm, the DApps farm, Umami. If you hold these tokens, you can potentially get eligibility for an airdrop. So the Jones DAO, the Hop farm. This thread goes through the best way to essentially go about getting an airdrop. So he thinks that this is the best chance of getting an airdrop. It's actually preparing via holding a little bit of each token in the ecosystem. Very, very small amounts, but just being on the ecosystem, holding some tokens in the ecosystem, that'll be the only real way that we know you can actually get an Arbitrum airdrop. And Arbitrum recently published that series of on-chain requests that you can check out on their website to see kind of like the certain checkpoints that you want to be hitting. But have a read on this thread because it gives you some good insight onto how you may get access to that airdrop as well. And then we also have Nitro, which was the first major upgrade, which was very, very bullish for the ecosystem because it essentially reduced fees all the way down from 9 cents down to 4 cents. And we could see the send ETH at its lowest transaction was actually a cent before the uptick in transaction volume. That's a very, very low fee basis. So clearly, they've got more scope for growth on the tech side as well. And they're handling a decent amount of transactions now, which they previously weren't. And then we've got Arbitrum Odyssey. I know a lot of you have heard about it because it's been out for around a month, but that's essentially the 8-week incentive program, which is still active. You can check it out using the link below in this guy's thread. I'll get the actual link for you guys. This link may be unsafe. Okay, I don't want to click on that. Maybe don't click on that, but just Google Arbitrum Odyssey and go onto their official website just to be safe in case this guy's shortening some dodgy link. It's probably safe, but just to be safe, Google it. It's an 8-week incentive program to encourage people to bridge over or use protocols under Arbitrum. So that is an incentive program that you guys can still get exposure to. And that the thread I showed you at the end, or just before actually, which I may have deleted now, gives you the step-by-step outline on how to gain exposure to the airdrops. So Nitro's helping, Odyssey's helping. There's a lot of hype around this potential airdrop, but for me, the biggest upside comes in investing in the projects directly. To me, that is where you're going to get the upside with probably a 6-month time horizon. Some of these you can actually have a longer time horizon. What does a longer time horizon do? Like, for example, Beefy Finance, I have probably a 1 to 2 year time horizon on that. That means that I can be a little slower with my DCAs, right? It means that I can get exposure now over the next few months, probably sell some off into some airdrop hype, and then continue to hold over a couple of years. Lowers my overall risk profile because I'm going to be holding this for a couple of years anyway, but I still have a great opportunity to book some profits in if there is Arbitrum hype. And then some of these smaller, lower cap tokens probably aren't as good long term, but they may be good for a little pump. But you definitely just, size that your risk accordingly. You just put less into those than you would some of these bigger projects. So longer your time horizon, the more you put over a long period of time. Shorter the time horizon, the less you put over a shorter period of time. It is quite simple, but you just have to really write down on a piece of paper and outline how you would like to allocate. Because, and I'll also do this in a future video as well, because I don't think there's a huge rush to buy today to ape in, but it's certainly something we need to look at within the next couple of weeks, because I think there's going to be some hype surrounding this in the near future. Just before we head off here, something very interesting to note is that when the OP, so the optimistic rollup airdrop was announced, Stephen Goldfeder, who is the co-founder of Arbitrum or Off-Chain Labs, who are building Arbitrum, he said the appetizer is always served before the main course. Basically saying, if we read between the lines here, that Optimism was the appetizer and Arbitrum airdrop is the main course. So this means it's coming soon. We've already got the entree. We're just waiting for this main course here. That's why I kind of say within the next few months to 6 months, it's probably likely that we get this. But he did say this in April, and it's already September, so it's already been many months, and we haven't yet seen an airdrop here. So I feel like we're just getting closer and closer. But we don't have that official date that a lot of people would like to hear and are waiting for. And Crimson said Synapse has been an excellent bridge. It is a great bridge. And I think exposure to Synapse, you could do a lot of stupider things long term. In fact, that's a project I'm accumulating long term. I think, it's pretty, if you believe in the future of bridges, it's one you want exposure to. There's a few, future video on that coming because it's a great topic. There's a few you want, but I'd say Synapse definitely up there, probably at the top of the list for now. Unless there's some major innovation, then we'll look at the next, obviously Layer 0 is great. But we'll look at the next innovation if it comes. But until then, I really do like Synapse. So yeah, that's my thesis on Arbitrum. Let me know in the comments what you actually think. And smash the like button, because I do think this is something that definitely has potential to play out. Something I'll keep covering. I'll keep you guys updated with this. Narratives that don't come up every day. They aren't. It isn't something that just we're onto a new thing every single day. I think some things take a couple months to build out. Some things take weeks to build out. Some things take years to build out. And this is one of these things that I think over the next few months, we're just going to start to see a bit of momentum pick up. Clearly, it's already picked up. ahead of the ETH merge. But with the ETH merge now happening, I think this is a good opportunity to revisit it, because we will possibly see a bit of the hype cool off for some of these tokens. And if that happens, that's only a good thing in terms of buying opportunities. So now is the optimal time to give you guys this update. And every single day, I'm going to be helping you guys with this journey where we're going to build some monster portfolios over the next few months for the next cycle. Like, that is really my focus now, researching some of these smaller caps, getting exposure to some of these big narratives, and really starting to set ourselves up for success. Now is really the time to start looking. I do think we have we don't have an expiry date, but we have a good idea of, you know, the time horizon we're looking at now that we want to be accumulating within. I'd say that's 6 to 12 months. So, you know, we got to start thinking, because before you know it, you'll blink, it'll be February. And, you know, you want to make sure you've got your portfolio set up before then. And that's something we're going to really do over the next few months in these daily shows. And we're going to get on the right track in that sense. And on my Twitter, of course, where I keep you guys updated as well. But until tomorrow, I'm not going live on Insta today because I have a meeting. But until tomorrow, I hope you have a good one. And yeah, continue to dig into this stuff in your free time, because doing some of your own research on this certainly does not hurt at all. All right. Thank you all for joining me. I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.